All right, so you've reached out because you found some blood in your dog's poop, and
Yeah.
I get it. It's unsettling. It's
Yeah.
not something you want to see, and it can be hard to know what it means.
Right.
So for this deep dive, we're going to really thoroughly explore this with you.
Absolutely.
We want to kind of cut through all of the worry and give you a clear picture of what this could mean.
Exactly. And, we want to look at all of the different possibilities
Right.
from the more common causes that might not be as serious to the ones that are really critical
Right.
to get to the vet for right away.
Yeah.
We don't want to alarm anybody, but rather empower you to
Yeah.
really understand what you're seeing
Yeah.
and make those informed decisions about your dog.
Yeah, you shared a really helpful guide with us from Pawsportal.
Yeah.
And that's going to be our roadmap
Great.
as we navigate the different potential causes
Absolutely.
of blood in dog stool and what the various appearances of the blood can indicate. And crucially, when it's time to seek professional veterinary advice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Yeah.
When we talk about blood in dog stool,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the first things
Yeah.
that might be causing this?
So one of the common reasons, and
Yeah.
particularly in younger dogs,
Uh-huh.
puppies, or even adult dogs who aren't on a consistent deworming schedule,
Right.
are parasites.
Oh, okay.
So we're talking about things like hookworms,
Yeah.
whipworms, giardia.
Right.
These little guys can actually attach to the lining of the intestines
Wow.
and cause irritation and bleeding as they're feeding.
Oh, yes.
Studies actually show that a really high percentage of
Yep.
puppies can have intestinal parasites. So it's definitely something to consider if you haven't dewormed your dog
Well,
recently.
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget about those little invaders.
Yeah.
So what else could be at play? Because I know my own dog
Yeah.
has a real talent for finding
Yeah.
and sampling all sorts of interesting things outdoors.
Oh, yeah. The infamous dietary indiscretion.
Yeah.
Dogs are, enthusiastic eaters.
Yes.
And sometimes their choices aren't the best for their digestive system, whether it's raiding the garbage
Yeah.
or finding some, questionable leftovers on a
Yeah.
walk or just eating something that's difficult to break down.
Mm-hmm.
This can really lead to a lot of gastrointestinal upset,
Right.
causing inflammation and sometimes even bleeding
Yeah.
as those tissues react.
Yeah, it's something a lot of dog owners can relate to.
It is, absolutely.
And this next one was really interesting to me when I was reading through the Pawsportal guide.
Okay.
The connection between stress or anxiety
Oh, yeah.
and digestive issues.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that,
Yes,
because
sir.
that's not something that I would immediately think of.
Well, it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
The link between a dog's emotional state
Yeah.
and their physical health,
Uh-huh.
especially their gut.
Wow.
Just like in humans, stress can really have a big impact. And digestive problems
Yeah.
are a really common way that this manifests.
Okay.
Things like being in a new environment, like
Mhm.
boarding or moving or separation anxiety can really trigger a lot of different physical responses
Uh-huh.
that can lead to GI inflammation and in
Mhm.
some cases even bleeding. That's something to really keep in mind,
Yes,
especially around times of change or travel.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes you think about their overall well-being in a broader sense.
For sure.
Now shifting to something a little bit more mechanical.
Okay.
What about constipation? That
Yeah.
seems like a more direct cause.
It can be
Pink blood.
when a dog is straining to pass stool.
Uh-huh.
That can cause some tears in the rectum.
Oh,
And that often results in bright red blood
okay.
that you might see on the surface of the stool or even a few drops afterwards.
Okay.
And while this isn't usually a
Yeah.
sign of something serious,
Right. It's definitely an indicator that something needs to be addressed
Right.
to make things a little easier for your dog.
absolutely.
Mm.
Okay, so let's move on to some of the possibilities that are a bit more concerning.
Okay.
Infections were mentioned in the guide,
Right.
and parvovirus was specifically highlighted.
Yeah. Infections,
Yeah.
whether they're bacterial or viral, can be a significant cause of blood in the stool.
Okay.
Parvovirus
Uh-huh.
is especially serious for puppies who haven't been vaccinated.
Right.
This virus can cause severe bloody diarrhea,
Oh, wow.
vomiting, and they get sick very quickly.
Gosh.
This is why it's so important to make sure that your puppy gets all their shots.
Definitely a stark reminder of the
Yeah.
importance of those puppy shots.
Absolutely.
So what about physical injury?
Okay.
My dog's a big chewer,
Yeah.
and I'm always a little worried about what he might be getting into.
Right. That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Chewing on sharp things like bones,
Mm-hmm.
especially cooked bones, or swallowing something they shouldn't,
Yeah.
can cause some damage in the digestive tract.
Oh, no.
And these injuries can lead to bleeding.
Wow.
And sometimes might even require surgery, depending on how bad it is.
Wow, that sounds pretty serious.
Yeah.
And finally, the Pawsportal Guide touches on cancer or growths within the digestive system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I think would understandably be a major worry for any dog owner.
It's definitely a concern.
Yeah.
And it's something that vets consider, especially in older dogs, while it's less common than some of the other things we've talked about, especially in younger, healthy dogs.
Right.
Tumors in the GI tract can lead to bleeding.
Okay.
And this is often a consideration if the bleeding is persistent, doesn't respond to treatment, or if there are other signs like weight loss or changes in appetite.
Okay, so that gives us a really comprehensive overview of the potential reasons.
It does.
Behind finding blood in dog stool.
Yeah.
The guide also goes into how the appearance of the blood itself can offer clues. And this seems like really important information for us to pay attention to at home.
Absolutely.
So let's start with bright red blood.
Okay.
What does that usually tell us?
So bright red blood,
Yeah.
which is called hematochezia,
Okay.
usually means the bleeding is happening in the lower part of the digestive tract.
So the colon or the rectum?
Exactly.
Right.
And because the blood hasn't been digested yet, it's still bright red.
I see.
You might see streaks of red on the stool or even drops after your dog is done.
Okay, so bright red usually means lower down.
Right.
That's a good distinction to keep in mind.
Exactly.
Now, what about when the stool looks very dark, almost black,
Okay.
and has a tarry consistency?
Right.
That sounds quite different.
It is.
Potentially more alarming.
So that type of stool is called Melena.
Okay.
And it usually means that the blood has been digested. So this means that the bleeding's happening higher up in the stomach or the small intestines.
Got it.
As the blood travels through, it gets exposed to the stomach acid and enzymes, and that breaks it down and turns it that dark color.
Wow.
It often has a pretty strong odor, too.
Okay. That definitely sounds like something that would warrant a prompt call to the vet.
Yeah, for sure.
And the last type that was mentioned was mucus mixed with blood.
Yes.
What does that suggest?
So when you see that slimy coating on the stool, that's usually mucus with blood.
Okay.
And this is often associated with inflammation of the colon, which we call colitis.
Right.
So it indicates irritation in the large intestine.
Okay. This is all incredibly helpful in terms of knowing what to look for.
Good.
And what different appearances might signify.
Right.
Now, the guide also recommends taking a picture or even bringing a sample to the vet.
Yes.
If you're unsure about what you're seeing.
Definitely.
That seems like really practical advice.
It is. It's always better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Visual information is really helpful for vets when they're making a diagnosis.
Right.
And a sample lets them do testing to really figure out what's going on.
Okay, so we've talked about the various causes
Yes.
and what the different types of blood might indicate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's get to a really critical aspect.
Okay.
When should you, as a dog owner, absolutely seek veterinary help?
Right.
If you notice blood in your dog's stool?
Yeah, so there are some really clear signs that mean you should call your vet right away.
Okay.
These include seeing a lot of blood,
Okay.
or if the blood is accompanied by diarrhea or vomiting.
Got it.
Also, if your dog seems lethargic or is in pain,
Right.
or if you notice pale gums or rapid breathing.
Okay.
Additionally, if you see blood with vomiting or diarrhea, or if it keeps happening over and over again, those are all signs to call the vet immediately.
Those all sound like situations where you wouldn't want to wait and see. Absolutely.
Oh, but if it's just a single instance of a small amount of bright red blood,
Yeah.
and our dog otherwise seems fine.
Right.
Their energy's normal.
Mm-hmm.
They're eating well and acting like their usual playful selves.
In that case, it's reasonable to monitor your dog closely.
Okay.
Just keep an eye on their bowel movements and their behavior.
Right.
But if you have any feeling at all that something's not right, it's always best to err on the side of caution.
Right.
And give your vet a call.
Yeah, better safe than sorry.
Exactly. You know your dog best.
Yeah.
Trusting your instincts is always good.
Absolutely. That's reassuring to know that not every instance is a full-blown emergency,
Right.
but that we should always be vigilant.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, a question I'm sure a lot of listeners have is, can blood in dog stool ever simply resolve on its own?
Sometimes, Yes.
Okay.
If the bleeding is due to a very minor irritation,
Yeah.
maybe from a treat or stress.
It might clear up within a day or two.
But there are also specific conditions where you definitely shouldn't just wait and see, right?
Exactly. If you keep seeing blood for more than 48 hours, or if the bloody stools become more frequent, or if there are other symptoms like vomiting, lethargy, or loss of appetite,
Got it.
then it's definitely time to see the vet.
Okay, so if we do end up taking our dog to the vet, what kind of diagnostic procedures might the vet perform to figure out the cause of the problem?
So the specific process will depend on your dog, their symptoms, the blood, and their history.
Right.
But there are some common steps.
Good.
One of the first things is usually a fecal exam to check for parasites or bacteria.
Got it.
They might also suggest a dietary trial where you switch to a bland diet to see if that helps.
Okay.
Blood work can also be useful to assess organ function and identify infection or inflammation. And in some cases, they might recommend imaging, like x-rays or ultrasound to check for blockages or growths.
And what about the potential treatments?
Okay, so the treatment will depend on the cause.
Right.
But the guide lists several possibilities, including deworming meds if parasites are found, antibiotics or probiotics for gut health, 5E fluids for dehydration, and sometimes a prescription diet.
Okay. That gives us a good understanding of what to expect if we need to take our dog to the vet.
Yeah.
Now, while we're waiting for the appointment or after we've seen the vet,
Are
there any practical things we can do at home to help?
Yes, there are definitely things you can do.
Okay.
The guide suggests offering small, bland meals, like boiled chicken and rice.
Right.
It's also really important to make sure they have fresh water to stay hydrated.
Yeah.
Avoid giving them any treats or bones or fatty foods during this time. And keep a close eye on their bowel movements and what their stool looks like.
So you can report that to your vet.
Exactly.
And of course, it's essential to follow up with your vet.
Yes, definitely.
If the symptoms get worse or don't improve.
For sure.
The Pawsportal guide also includes a helpful FAQ section.
Oh, yeah.
Which addresses some common questions.
Right.
For instance, it says that while blood in your dog's stool isn't always an emergency, it always deserves attention.
Absolutely. It's a sign that something's up.
Right. And it confirms that worms are a pretty common cause.
Especially in puppies.
Especially in puppies.
Yeah.
The guide also stresses that blood in the stool, along with vomiting, is more serious.
That's right.
And requires prompt attention.
If you see those two things together, you need to call the vet ASAP.
And for those of us who have older dogs, the concern about cancer is also addressed.
It's important to be aware that persistent bleeding, especially with other signs, could be linked to a growth.
Right.
Your vet can do tests to figure out the cause and rule out serious conditions.
And finally, the relatable dog behavior.
Oh, yeah.
Of eating things they shouldn't.
It happens all the time.
Is highlighted as a common culprit.
Exactly.
So to bring everything together, it really sounds like finding blood in your dog's stool is a signal to stop, pay attention, and observe your dog.
It is.
While some cases might be mild and resolved on their own, it's important to know when to seek help.
Being proactive, paying attention to the details, and trusting your gut are all super important.
Your dog's poop might not be the most glamorous topic.
True.
But as you've seen, it can offer a vital window into their health.
It can definitely tell you a lot.
So what other small changes in your dog might be giving you clues about their health?
Good question.
It's a good reminder to always be observant.
Absolutely.
And proactive.
Yes.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll see you next time.
Sounds good.